Hi, I'm going to take a look this time at the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen that took place in 2023. This was a game from Speed Championship, and there was some pretty interesting rook endgame that happened in this game that I think is well worth looking at. And it's interesting how to proceed, how to win in this rook endgame. Okay, let's move on. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop B5, A6, bishop A4, knight F4, castle, bishop E7, D3, B5, bishop D3, castle, H3, D6, bishop D2, H6, C4. This is a variant of Ruy Lopez that is pretty rare, and this is not very standard. Usually white plays c3 and knight b to d2 and then knight to f1. This variant is quite unusual, but since Nakamura is playing it, it might be either prepared or it might be just a good line to play. Rook b8, knight c3, knight a5, knight d5, knight takes b3, a takes b3, knight captures on d5, c captures on d5, and now there is a pretty powerful line c for white, and already I would prefer this position to play for white. Bishop b7, bishop a5. It's interesting the way that Nakamura attacks the pawn on c7. Now Carlsen is going to have some difficult time defending this pawn. Queen d7, d4, c6, d takes e5, c takes d5, e takes d5, d takes e5, knight e5, queen d6, bishop c3, b4, knight c3, queen captures on d5. There is a threat of checkmate on g2 now. Nakamura is going to exchange the queen, since other than that I don't think there is anything to do. Queen d5, bishop d5, bishop e5, rook b to c8. Rook was attacked, and probably it seems like Magnus Carlsen misses this fork with a knight to a bishop and the rook. Rook c to d8, and now it seems that Magnus missed that he is going to lose an exchange. After the next move that was made by Nakamura, Magnus loses an exchange. Bishop goes to c7. Now rook d8 is attacked, and if rook d8 goes to e8, then a capture on d5 is going to follow. It's going to be a loss for black. Magnus would lose a piece, so Magnus has to essentially sacrifice an exchange, but maybe he is going to get some good compensation for it. Bishop b3, bishop d8, rook d8, rook a6, bishop f6, knight a4, bishop c4. Seems like Nakamura missed a fork with the bishop on two rooks. Magnus is winning back an exchange, but still there are some problems. Rook captures on f6, bishop captures on f1, but now there is a problem, and the problem is that the pawn b4 is weak. Nakamura is going to capture the pawn after rook b6. Now bishop has to go away. Okay, bishop doesn't go away, the bishop stays on the same place, and maybe there is a capture now on b4. Okay, Nakamura doesn't capture on b4, despite it seems plausible. After a possible capture on b4, rook b4, there are no targets for attack for the bishop. So move rook b8 with a possible intermediate move, rook b8 check, in order to displace black's skin. Seems possible, but Nakamura prefers it seems possible, but probably after rook b4, bishop b5 check, king h2, bishop a4, rook a4. There is a move rook d2, which would lead to an equal position. Then white had to do an intermediate check on b8, then rook f4 would follow, rook captures b2, rook captures f7, and it would be a dead draw essentially. King h2, rook d4, knight c5, rook d5, knight b3, bishop c4, rook captures on b4, and Nakamura manages to win a pawn. What follows is that Magnus goes into an endgame with a pawn. Now, strangely enough, Nakamura doesn't consider it necessary to make an intermediate check on b8, rook b8, misplacing the king. He just immediately captures, and Nakamura enters an endgame, an interesting endgame with an extra pawn, b, rook endgame, rook d2, rook b8, king h7, king g3, g5, king f3, king g6, rook b6, f6, king e3, rook c2, b4, rook b2, rook b8, h5, b5, h4, b6, king g7, king f3. It seems like white has some sizable advantage. King g6, b7. Okay, there is now an imminent threat of playing rook g8 check and then promoting b8 queen. What essentially black has to do, black has to withdraw its king. There are some side checks from like rook b3, rook b4, rook b2. There are some side checks, but at any rate, black is going to need to retract the king to g7 or to h7, and the king is going to stay there. The king is going to stay there, and we're approaching the position that I wanted to show you, since the position is interesting. King h5, rook f4. Magnus created some counterattack, but the pawns are untouchable. It's impossible for the rook to capture on g2, since immediately rook c8 would follow with the promotion. Rook b4, king g4, f3, king f3, rook b1. And now this is the position that I wanted essentially to show you, and I wanted to offer you to think over this position, since this position is interesting. White has two extra pawns. This is a rook endgame. White has two extra pawns, and what is the way essentially that you would propose to continue this game for white? How would you essentially go for a win if there is a win in this position? There are two extra pawns, but also there are some defensive chances. So maybe you should pause the video, take several minutes to think over this position, and then come up with an answer, and I will continue. The plan for a good plan for white is essentially to march forward, pawn h3, h4, h4, h5, h5, h6 check, and then black is not going to be able to capture on h6, since what is going to follow is rook h8 check and promotion to b8. And also king is not going to be able to move to f7, since rook h8 is going to follow, and if rook captures on b7, then rook h7 check and a capture of the rook. So black's king is going to be stuck after promotion of the pawn to h6, is going to be stuck on h7, and then what is going to happen is that pawn f6 is going to become weak, and then white has a chance of actually capturing this pawn, or at least taking this pawn with the king. So let's see what happens, and it's going to be enough for a victory, since already by that point 3 pawns, and white is going to be some 3 extra pawns, and it's going to be enough probably for the victory. Rook b2, king f5, rook b5, king e6, rook b6, king e7, rook b1, h4. Now we're seeing that Nakamura starts the same maneuver that I recommended, of advancing the h pawn and placing the h pawn on h6. rook e1, king d6, rook d1, king e6, rook e1, king f5, rook f1, king g4, rook b1, h5. Carlsen is unable to stop the h pawn, is going to reach h6 square, and after this pawn f6 is going to fall. Rook b4, king f5, rook b5, king f4, rook b4, king f3, rook b3, king e4, rook b4, king d5, rook b1, h6. Finally, Nakamura makes this move, and the only plausible move for black to make is to play king h7 in this situation. King h7 is played, king e6, and now, after playing rook b6, king goes to f5, and black essentially in a situation of somewhat resembling a Zugzwang. So any move that black makes is going to allow white to capture the pawn, to capture some material or to increase its advantage. And in this position, Carlsen resigned, since pawn f6 is going to fall, and the 3 pawn is going to be definitely sufficient for victory. Thank you for watching.